All right, business news now with our Stephen Carroll. Hi, Stephen.
Hi, Jeannie.
Let's start with Greece. More concerns over its finances again.
Yes, you won't believe me if I tell you, but it's yet another crunch week for Greece, and that's because the eurozone's finance ministers are meeting later to discuss reforms proposed by Greece in exchange for unlocking the next tranche of its bailout money. The Greek finance minister, Yanis Varoufakis, has upped the stakes by suggesting that a referendum or fresh elections could be held as a vote on their economic policies. This as Greece faces running out of cash as tax revenues fall and debt repayments loom. Belle Lupton has the details.
His country's economic fate back in the balance. But Greece's finance minister isn't preparing for the end of the world just yet.
And what are you going to do if a comet strikes the planet Earth this moment? How will you respond to that?
Speaking at a conference in Italy, Yanis Varoufakis put pressure on Greece's lenders to plug the gap in its finances.
We can go back to elections or call a referendum, but as my Prime Minister told me, we are not glued to our seats yet.
Greece's partners have already extended its bailout agreement by 4 months, but the money isn't due to be paid over until April after the first reforms have been put in place. Greece can't wait till then. Plummeting tax revenues have created a new budget crisis. On Friday, Varoufakis sent his proposal, a 7-point programme of reforms, to the Eurogroup's president, an effort to speed up the payment of €7 billion of their bailout loans. Among the proposals, establishing an independent fiscal council to monitor government spending, better budget preparation, creating a new body to combat tax evasion, repaying state arrears and reducing bureaucracy to help businesses. The plan was welcomed by the Eurogroup president, who stressed the importance of keeping reform talks going. But time is running out for Greece, which is reported to need up to €2 billion by the end of this week to pay its bills.
Staying in the eurozone, the European Central Bank has fired its so-called big bazooka. The banks confirmed that it and eurozone central banks have begun buying government debt, an action aimed at boosting the region's economy. They'll buy €60 billion worth of bonds every month in an effort to increase inflation. Mario Draghi says the €1.1 trillion programme will spur the fastest growth in the euro area in 80 years. Let's see how the markets are reacting to that news at this midpoint in the trading day here in Europe. No great excitement, in fact, on the European markets. We've also had news from the OECD that there are positive signs in the eurozone for growth. None of that helping shares, though, as you can see. One company we're watching for you this lunchtime is the world's largest advertising company, WPP. Their shares up about 0.4% in London after their annual results. But you can see shares in Athens down 4% ahead of that eurozone meeting later.
All right, Stephen, let's turn to something completely different, and the Apple Watch, which is set to be unveiled.
Yes, that's right. The event's being called Spring Forward by Apple, and many industry watchers are expecting it to shake up the smartwatch market. Apple's offering was first announced last September. The successful launch could push the company towards a landmark value of $1 trillion. But for more on this, let's go to London and speak to Daniel Gleeson, who's a senior analyst at IHS Technology. Daniel, thanks for joining us. What do we know exactly about the Apple Watch? What do we know that it's going to be able to do?
Well, we know quite a bit already about what the Apple Watch can do. Obviously, it will do most of normal watch functions, but it will also add as a notification center and even host some of its own apps. I think that was the main framework that Apple outlined 6 months ago, and we expect that at this event that Apple will actually unveil some of the apps that it has been working with some selected partners over the last 6 months to really kickstart that app ecosystem in time for the launch.
And are we expecting this to have the same sort of effect on the tablet market that the iPad did, or are we going to see that replicated, do you think, with the Apple Watch today?
I think it's highly likely. I think the entire smartwatch market has really been waiting for this. It's been an open secret even for the past year that Apple have been working on it, and particularly since Apple officially announced it in September. There have been numerous new Android smartwatches launched, but the feeling is that consumers were very hesitant and wanted to wait and see what Apple exactly were bringing to the table before really committing. It's also going to be interesting to note about the wide range of prices that Apple will be making this available in, because that's going to be the big difference between all products that Apple have previously worked in that have had very narrow ranges of price points. this big wide range of price points for the Apple Watch. It could hit all sorts of segments within the watch market.
And what sort of things do we need to be looking out for when we start getting the details from this launch later?
I think the key things to look out for will be, number one, as I said, what apps will be available on launch and what sort of capabilities they will have baked in. That's going to be the key selling point of any smartwatch versus any other type of watch. The second thing, of course, will be more details on the pricing. Apple was very vague on the pricing at its launch event, only given the lower price bound. The price ranges for many of the metal and steel finished watches will be particularly interesting, with some rumours that some of the gold finished watches could be reaching up into 5,000 to 10,000 euro category prices. The third thing that would probably be very interesting to watch out for is potentially an expansion of Apple Pay, Apple's payment system, which has been currently running the US via the iPhone 6. With the release of the Apple Watch, it seems like an opportune moment for Apple to expand that Apple Pay system to Europe, and that could be kind of the big announcement on the day.
Okay, Daniel, just before you go, what's your take on this? Is this going to be another big successful launch for Apple?
I think it is going to be, and Apple really does need it. Even though it had a record quarter for iPhone sales last year, just the end of last year, across all Western markets in the US and Europe, smartphone penetration is reaching close to 100%, or at the very least in the 90% mark. So there really isn't a huge amount of growth really in the smartphone market, particularly at that very high end where Apple works at. So it needs a new market to really spur growth. And on top of that, when you think about what Apple is doing with a watch, it is building a big ecosystem now of devices and of apps that tie people down into the Apple ecosystem, make it very difficult for them to leave, and of course means Apple will get more money from them in the long run.
Indeed. Okay, Daniel Gleeson at IHS in London, thank you for joining us. Of course, we'll have all the details of that launch later in the day here on France 24.
All right, Stephen Carroll, thank you so much for that look at the day's